reality of the government and people of St. Kitts and Nevis, but for his active participation in this meeting and even the OECS meeting yesterday, notwithstanding some very momentous personal developments in the Prime Minister's own life. And so we're very grateful that he was able to join us and stay with us for the duration of the meeting and participate as actively and wisely as he did. And we're very grateful for that. And the governor, of course, for his usual excellent stewardship of these meetings. As is the practice in these press conferences, I will deliver the highlights of what was agreed and what was analyzed over the course of the meeting today, and then we'll be open to any questions, either by the local press or the regional media that's joining us online. So the 107th meeting of the Monetary Council of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank was held today at the Central Bank campus in St. Kitts and Nevis under my chairmanship. The Monetary Council received the Governor's report on monetary, credit, and financial conditions in the currency union for the period of January to December 2023. The report was titled "The Big Push: Implementation for Impact in an Era of Elevated Uncertainty," and it provided an overview of the key risks to financial stability within the currency union and assessed their potential impact in the near to medium term, while also focusing on the pertinent question, what will it take to double GDP in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union? And the Governor's report indicated that the post-COVID global economy, which saw better than expected 2023, has shown resilience and that resilience is forecast to continue into 2024. And as downside risks, there is a slowing global economy and an uncertainty that portend headwinds ahead for the currency union, particularly in tourism, which had a strong rebound in 2022 that continued into 2023. The International Monetary Fund forecast in its January 2024 World Economic Outlook update that global GDP is likely to grow by 3.1% in 2024, which is an unchanged growth rate from the previous year. Other downside risks include geopolitical and inflationary pressures. Consumer and food prices eased in 2023 and are forecast to continue doing so in 2024. Fertilizer prices have also moderated from their 2022 highs. However, the last mile in the fight against inflation remains a challenge. For instance, shipping disruptions and delays in the Red Sea have caused a spike in shipping costs, and shipping is a challenge throughout the globe at the moment, from the drought in the Panama Canal to uncertainties in the Middle East and beyond. Here in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, the growth outlook is positive. The economy continues to expand and inflation is abating. Implementing strategic reforms is key for building resilience and elevating the growth trajectory. On the upside, increased investments in areas such as food and nutrition security can build additional resilience against shocks. Monetary, credit, and financial conditions in the currency union remain stable and accommodative, as well as conducive to the stability of the currency. The current backing in respect of foreign reserves is 95.13% as of the 9th of February 2024, up from 94.8%, which was reported in the 106th meeting, which was held in November of last year. Having considered the state of monetary, financial, and credit conditions in the currency union, and on the recommendation of the governor, the Monetary Council agreed to first maintain the minimum savings rate at 2% and second, maintain the discount rate at 3% for short-term credit and 4.5% for long-term credit. The Monetary Council increased the central bank's discount rate by 100 basis points, or 1%, moving from 2% to 3% for short-term credit and from 3.5% to 4.5% for long-term credit in the meeting that we held last November. Those were the first rate hikes since the discount rate and long-term lending rate were lowered in April 2020 and February 2021, respectively, in response to the challenges of the COVID pandemic. The minimum savings rate is the lowest rate that commercial banks can offer on savings deposits, and the central bank discount rate is the rate at which the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank lends to governments and to commercial banks. On the issue of financial stability, the Monetary Council was advised of the following developments in the financial sector. First, that the currency union banking system remains resilient and stable with a high degree of liquidity. Excess liquidity levels have been trending down as local banks manage their balances by investing overseas to take advantage of higher interest rates. Nonetheless, there remains significant excess liquidity in our regional banking system. Capital buffers remain at robust levels, and although the financial sector stability has been maintained, vulnerabilities persist. The non-performing loan ratios of commercial banks and credit unions remain elevated at 12.2% for commercial banks and 7.8%, well above the 5% benchmark. So we have some work to do still with non-performing loans across the region. The Credit Bureau, which has recently rebranded from Credit Info ECCU Limited to Every Data ECCU Limited, is in the process of completing data sharing agreements as part of their work. Soft launches are being planned for Antigua and Barbuda and St. Kitts and Nevis in the first quarter of this year. The central bank initiated the ECCU Credit Bureau project in 2017 with the objectives of strengthening credit risk management and enhancing access to credit. On the issue of financial and debt sustainability, fiscal performance improved in 2023 in tandem with the economic recovery, placing the currency union back on the path towards debt sustainability. Given the relative volatility in citizenship by investment revenue, strategic reforms are needed to facilitate a broadening of the regional revenue base. On the issue of growth and competitiveness, the growth outlook remains positive across the board in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, with tourism expected to continue leading the economic recovery throughout 2024, as it did in 2023. Indeed, tourism has rebounded to pre-pandemic levels, with revenues in the first 3 quarters of 2023 surpassing revenues in 2019 over the same period. On the issue of financial inclusion, the Council was updated on the closure, effective 12th of January 2024, of the DCash pilot project. The DCash pilot, which began on the 31st of March 2021, provided crucial information for further innovation and the transition to DCash 2.0, a more advanced and user-friendly version that will enhance utility for users, including businesses and financial institutions. The Monetary Council was updated on implementation of the central bank's Greening the Financial System initiative. The program is advancing apace across the 3 project work streams, namely Green Finance Network, Climate Risk Stress Testing and Assessment Framework, and Renewable Energy Financing Solutions via the planned Regional Renewable Energy Infrastructure Investment Facility project. We received reports on BICO, CLICO, ECMC, ECPCGC, and ECSRC. Those are mouthfuls, lots of letters there. The Monetary Council received a report from the Core Committee on Insurance. The Core Committee is charged with advancing efforts to bring resolution for ECCU policyholders of the failed insurance companies British American Insurance and Clico Life Insurance Limited. Council agreed to continue its efforts to resolve the outstanding matters and facilitate an additional payout to the ECCU policyholders. In that regard, Prime Minister Gaston Brown has provided invaluable leadership and continues to lead efforts to recover additional payouts for policyholders. The Monetary Council considered and adopted the contents of reports from the Eastern Caribbean Asset Management Corporation, the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation, and the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission. The Council approved the Regulatory Commission's budget and work program for 2024-25 financial year, and the Council also approved the Eastern Caribbean Asset Management Corporation's 2023 audit report, which comprises the audited financial statements for the year ended March 2023. Prior to the meeting, prior to today's meeting, earlier this morning and previously, the Monetary Council engaged in productive discussions with the Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Mr. Bo Lee, and his delegation during their visit to St. Kitts and Nevis from the 14th to the 16th of February. On the 16th of February, the Council held a meeting with the Deputy Managing Director Lee and his team, focused on climate finance, which was held against the backdrop of an increased global focus on climate change issues. Both the central bank and IMF officials agreed that the partnerships with the international financial institutions and other stakeholders are needed to advance climate action, adaptation, and finance at the regional currency union level. The central bank has already made steps towards greening the ECCU financial system, and collaborations with institutions such as the World Bank Group and NDC partnership are bearing fruit to ensure that the right framework policies are in place to facilitate this continuing greening of our economy. The Monetary Council acknowledges the strong representation and advocacy on behalf of the region by IMF Executive Director Mr. Philip Jennings and his constituency office. The Council thanks Mr. Jennings for his tireless service and looks forward to continuing the fruitful partnership between his office and our region. Finally, we agreed to convene the 108th meeting of the Monetary Council in mid-July in Anguilla, immediately following the handing over ceremony to mark the change in chairmanship of the Monetary Council. And the Honorable Dr. Ellis Webster, Antigua's Premier Anguilla's Premier and Minister of Finance, is due to assume chairmanship of the council at that time. So it was a busy day's work, and before we began, we had a busy morning of consultations, as was indicated with the IMF, but we think we've done some important work to advance the interests of the region and to secure further the fiscal stability of our currency union. And I thank the Governor and his team for their continued stewardship and leadership of the currency union, not only through the perilous times of COVID and the recovery, but now in this period of growth, expansion, and resilience building. Thank you. I don't know if we'll go straight to questions. If there are any questions from the media, I'm sure that the Prime Minister Drew or Governor Antoine can assist us in responding to any questions you may have.
Devon Cornelius, ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation, St. Kitts. For Mr. Prime Minister, in the report that the chairman just read, he mentioned that there is a 12.2% rate for non-performing loans. what support can we anticipate from St. Kitts and Nevis to lower this rate that appears to be exorbitant?
Right, thank you very, very much. He did not specify any country, but I would say that we are seeing this also in some of our institutions. I would say that we should have seen a decrease, for example, in our bank, our national bank. What we have done, or what the National Bank would have done in dealing with this, one, can we really negotiate with those who are the loan owners? We recognize that during COVID, a lot of persons who would have lost their jobs, who would have had difficulties in really, gaining an employment, that they who would have had loans would have been, have difficulties paying, and they would fall in that category. Since we have seen some recovery of the economy, for example, in St. Kitts and Nevis, and as the chairman would have said, we have seen that across the region. I think that there's opportunity really to have the lowering of the loans. But in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have brought in people, we negotiated some of those loans, people went back to work, started to repay. And in addition to that, what we have done also is to create a climate. If you look at the national banks, for example, home policy, or you look at development banks, small business loan facility, the conditions and the interest rates and so on adjusted to be more favorable to those who are borrowing. So we expect to see an improvement in those who have loans in terms of repayments. And lastly to say, our facility that we had at the development bank, what we are seeing is that there is compliance of about 98%, just about 2% of non-performing loans. And a percentage of those persons are persons who have passed away. And that says a lot, that persons now in this new economy where we're seeing growth and expansion, we have seen with the new facilities we have provided a decrease, significant decrease in those who are non-compliant with their loan agreement. So from our perspective, that is where it lies. And I'm hoping that that is the same across the union as we continue to grow and expand as we go through 2023, 2024, and it looks fairly okay for us from a fiscal standpoint at this time.
We understand that the ECCU is experiencing a recovery. What does this mean for St. Kitts and Nevis's sustainable island state agenda?
Well, I think it boasts well for us. As you know, our sustainable island state agenda is really to deal with resilience, adaptation, and sustainability, as the name implies. And having the expansion of the economy, going back towards 2019 levels, and we're hoping to go beyond that. This, of course, gives us the opportunity to implement these fiscal policies to help us to achieve what we seek to achieve. So this is extremely good news, notwithstanding that we have our own challenges here, but we have seen economic growth in 2023, and we have seen more recovery, and we expect to see more growth in 2024. So yes, this is good news, and it helps us to get to where we want to go, which is to create the sustainable island state on the principles that I just outlined.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Are there any other questions from the media? I'm trusting whoever is looking at the online feed to see whether or not there's a question there. The governor advises that there's a question on Dcash, and I'm going to let the governor respond.
The question is, I would like a progress report on the digital currency that was discussed a year ago. So our digital currency is Dcash, and we, as indicated by the chairman, we just completed our pilot, which ended in January. I want to start by thanking all the persons, individuals, financial institutions, governments, who supported our pilot and who advocated for our pilot. And I especially thank the Monetary Council for supporting us on the journey of testing and learning our digital currency and what lessons we could distill from that experience. We have had some very rich lessons garnered from the experience. And as we engaged with the pilot was intended to allow us to position the region to proceed with a digital currency at commercial deployment. So at this stage, we're now reflecting on the lessons and preparing ourselves for Dcash 2.0. In December, and let me just say, for those persons who may have been inconvenienced by the closure of the pilot, I regret that, we regret that, but certainly we're now preparing for a bigger version, a better version with the lessons that we've learned. We did issue a request for information and a request for vendor information in December, ahead of the closure of the pilot. And we have so far received, I believe, 20 submissions and another 3 submissions. So about 22, 23 submissions on our invitation. So there's significant interest in partnering with the central bank. This pilot has garnered interest from around the world, a lot of interest in what we've done, what we've learned, and persons and individuals, firms wanted to partner with the currency union with respect to this initiative. I reflect on the fact that when we started the digital Dcash in 2021, and even the discussion prior to 2021, there were only a few central banks pursuing what we call central bank digital currency, CBDC. So Dcash is a CBDC, central bank digital currency. Today, more than 100 central banks around the world are pursuing their digital currencies. What was a pioneering effort and somewhat on the periphery is now a mainstream agenda on the many central banks around the world, large and small. So we led the world in a manner of speaking with respect to that. And I should say the Caribbean as well, because Bahamas was actually the first country, the ECCB was the first currency union, and then Jamaica followed with its own digital currency. So in this small region, relatively small, with small countries, small states, we have in fact led the way on practical deployment of central bank digital currencies. And we are now, of course, sharing all of the lessons that we've learned. I won't go into the lessons now except to say that going forward, we want to make sure the user experience is even easier and smoother. We want to make sure that the ecosystem is broader. We want to make sure that the marketing and public education is stronger, particularly at the grassroots level. We want to explore the possibility of offline capability, which is to say if you do not have internet, you could still have the opportunity to use Dcash. So those are some of the things that we are looking for in terms of the request for information and how we could position Dcash to play the role that we want to play. I will end by saying what I've always said about the payment system. The payment system should work for all except illicit actors. All except illicit actors. It has to work for the man and woman, the fisher folk, the farmer, the small business owner, the creative, and that is still our intent, and that is still our commitment. So again, what we were doing now is to review the lessons. We will be having some further consultations with key stakeholders that have played a part in the pilot and will play a part going forward. And so you should expect us to be reaching out soon with further discussions on our reflections and our lessons as we prepare for the next phase. And again, I want to thank everyone who participated, who expressed interest and support. And I'm encouraged by the fact that now that the pilot has closed, we're getting a lot of questions about where is Dcash, when are we going to be seeing it, and so on. So there is interest out there, we acknowledge that, and we are committed to using the lessons to come forward with a strong Dcash 2.0. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Governor. Are there any other questions from the media? Seeing none, I'd like to thank, on behalf of Prime Minister Drew and Governor Antoine and all the other governors, thank you for your attention this particular meeting, to the results of this particular meeting. And we think that relative to the challenges of the pandemic, where there was a severe contraction in the economies of the currency union, we are now on a path of not only recovery, because the recovery to pre-pandemic levels is complete essentially across the region, but on a solid growth trajectory in the near term. Our growth as a currency union is going to be somewhere around 5%. which is in excess of the global average for growth in 2024 and in excess of the growth forecast for Latin America and our neighbors in the region. This is due in no small part to the sound and wise stewardship of the leadership of the region, and also the strong advice and strong leadership that we receive in the form of Governor Antoine and the central bank. So it's been a rough few years post-COVID. We've climbed out of that hole, and now we're in a position to set our eyes again on the horizon and think about growth and further development in the interest of our people. That's where we are, and we'll continue to rely on the central bank to play its pivotal and ongoing role in financial stability, innovation, leadership, and people-centered development. Thank you.